They were young, proud, and convinced of victory. German soldiers captured on distant battlefields believed they belonged to the mightiest army in the world. But when they stepped off ships onto American soil, their confidence crumbled. What they saw would shock them for the rest of their lives. During World War II, the United States captured more than 370,000 German prisoners of war. Most of them had fought in North Africa or Western Europe. Instead of being kept in devastated war zones, they were shipped thousands of miles across the ocean, into the very heart of America. For many of these young men, this was their first glimpse of the United States. Nazi propaganda had told them America was weak, filled with crime, racial tension, and lazy workers. Their commanders said America could never build enough tanks or planes to challenge Germany's might. But when the prisoners arrived, reality struck them like a thunderbolt. As their trains rolled through endless farmlands, they saw fields stretching farther than the eye could see. They saw cities glittering with neon lights, cars on every road, and factories working day and night. America was not starving, nor was it collapsing. It was thriving. Some POWs later wrote in diaries that the journey itself shattered their illusions. In Germany, food was rationed, and cities lay in ruins from Allied bombing. Yet here in America, grocery stores were full, families went to movies, and children played in peaceful neighborhoods untouched by war. The shock deepened when they saw America's industrial power up close. Many camps housed prisoners near giant factories, aircraft plants, steel mills, shipyards. German POWs could not believe the scale. Tens of thousands of workers, men and women alike, assembling war machines at a pace no European nation could match. In their homeland, factories struggled to replace losses from Allied bombing. Raw materials were scarce. Workers were exhausted. But in America, trains delivered endless supplies. Machines never stopped. Every week, new tanks, planes, and ships rolled off production lines. One German prisoner later confessed, "When I saw the American factories, I knew the war was lost. We could never compete with this." If America's industrial might had shaken them, what came next would transform their very idea of the enemy. The German POWs were sent to hundreds of camps scattered across the United States. From Texas to Minnesota, from the Deep South to the Far West, these camps housed thousands of captured soldiers. Most expected harsh treatment, punishment, and perhaps starvation. After all, that was often how prisoners were treated in Europe. But instead, many were surprised to find themselves living in conditions far better than they imagined. Barracks were simple but clean. They were given decent clothing, medical care, and most importantly, food. Meals shocked them the most. American rations were plentiful: bread, meat, vegetables, and even coffee. Many German soldiers couldn't believe the quality and quantity. Back home, their families struggled to find enough to eat, and in Germany, even butter was a luxury. Yet here, in the land of the supposed weak Americans, they were eating meals that seemed like feasts. Prisoners were also given opportunities to work. They labored in fields, helped with harvests, and in some cases assisted with construction or factory tasks. But unlike forced labor back in Nazi-occupied territories, these jobs paid them small wages, money they could use at the camp canteen to buy cigarettes, candy, or even postcards to send home. Perhaps the most astonishing thing was the freedom within limits. While the camps were guarded, life inside was not constant misery. German prisoners played soccer, organized theater shows, and even had access to libraries. Some attended classes, learning English or studying subjects they had missed during the war. But the true cultural shock came when they interacted with ordinary Americans. Farmers who employed them often treated them with basic respect. Families in nearby towns sometimes invited them for meals, curious about these young men who only months earlier had fought under Hitler's banner. The Germans were stunned. Propaganda had told them Americans were brutal, greedy, and inhumane. Yet here they were, receiving kindness from strangers. Some POWs even admitted years later that their time in America changed how they viewed the world. They began to question the lies they had been fed in Germany. How could a nation portrayed as corrupt and weak actually be so prosperous, so powerful, and at times, so humane? Still, not every prisoner felt the same. A number remained loyal to Nazi ideology, forming secret groups inside the camps to intimidate others. Some even carried out violence against fellow Germans who they accused of being traitors. But for many, the experience planted seeds of doubt. The longer they stayed, the more they realized America's strength was not just in its factories and weapons, but in its way of life. As the war drew to an end, the fate of the German prisoners began to change once again. When Germany finally surrendered in May 1945, the prisoners knew their days in America were numbered. Slowly, groups of men were transported back across the Atlantic. For many, it was a bittersweet farewell. They had arrived in America as enemies, uncertain of what awaited them. They left with full stomachs, new knowledge, and memories of a land very different from what Nazi propaganda had promised. Returning home was a shock of its own. Their beloved Germany lay in ruins, cities flattened, industries destroyed, and millions struggling to survive. Families were broken, and hunger was everywhere. Compared to the abundance they had seen in America, the devastation felt overwhelming. Many ex-POWs later admitted they could not stop comparing the two worlds. In America, they had witnessed prosperity, fairness, and even kindness from former enemies. In Germany, they returned to rubble, division, and the long shadow of Hitler's failure. Some kept silent, fearful of being labeled traitors for speaking positively about their time in the United States. But deep inside, they carried a new perspective. They had seen firsthand that strength was not only about weapons, but also about freedom, unity, and opportunity. In later years, countless former POWs told their children and grandchildren about the paradox of their captivity. How, as prisoners, they had experienced more comfort and hope than they ever expected. For many, America had planted seeds of admiration that lasted a lifetime. And in those memories, one truth echoed. The war was lost not just on the battlefields of Europe, but in the factories, fields, and values of the United States itself.